This is everything we've done, but again, turned down. But we're going to talk about three shapes. Those three shapes are going to be the bicep, brachialis, and then tricep. These are the three shapes that you have to know to be able to design the upper arm in a convincing way. I'm going to start with the biggest and then work to the smallest. So that means that we're starting with the tricep and then moving to the bicep as the last muscle because it's the smallest. One thing that's good to remember in terms of thinking that is if we imagine the arm from the front, like in this view, we would see visual or perspective solution to think of the arm as a gold bar that broadens as it gets towards the back, right? That's how a gold bar would look. This is what your upper arm looks like from the front. Your bicep is really thin. It sits on top of the brachialis, which is a bit wider, and then in the back of the arm is widest, and that's your tricep. So everything is progressively getting wider. Where I think most people think the opposite. They think biceps are huge, and then the triceps are like these smaller things that you may see on the back. Same approach for each one. Let's jump over here and take a look at the back.
Hey guys, if you'd be interested in learning from Michael, check out the link in the description for his course on the fundamentals of figure construction. Thanks, and back to the video.
Of the arm. So we've done this much. Let's put in a better idea for where the back of the arm would sit. Here's my rib. This is my humerus. And then for setting up the tricep, I need a few things. So first thing I want to show is I need to find my landmarks around the elbow. So this is the funny bone. So that's a triangle. And then you have to find the lateral epicondyle, which is this curved surface here. Remember, those can always turn, so it's going to be up to you to make sure that you're vigilant and always try to find where those things are at. It would also be really useful to find where the ulna is. And so if the arm is straight, or if your arm is extended, your ulna is inside or kind of nestled in the pocket of the humerus, because there's a hinge joint here. If your arm bends, you'd see the funny bone and then the lateral epicondyle. Here would be the groove for where that ulna would normally sit, but if your arm is bent, this little guy, the ulna will pull out, and so that what makes that sharp bone or feel when you bend your elbow. So it just pulls out, and then it would be pulled toward the humerus by the bicep and brachialis. But the tricep connects here, so that's a really important landmark for it. And then let's just give the placement for the forearm. So remember, the ulna would be here, and then it's going to end, or I'm looking to end the wrist in line with the top of the hip. So we can't forget all of these little proportion marks, since now we've got so much invested with trying to think about all these muscles. That's enough, because I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I just want you thinking about one little piece or bite at a time, and so today we're just trying to get that upper arm. So what is the part? The part for the tricep could be any number of things. Again, it's up to you in terms of how you ultimately want to stylize these little pieces to best fit or suit your memory. Everything in the arm is essentially a ball, but ways you could remember the tricep would be, some people that I've studied with will say it looks like a lobster claw, so you could do like a ball but then a claw, and I can explain why later. I do something similar to what we did with the leg, because your tricep is the same as your quadricep. So you do a ball, stand it on a house, and hopefully you remember this from the study of the leg, and then there's 3 commas that attach to it. 1 comma here, there's another comma that's a little bit lower, and then there's a tiny baby comma on the inside. The lobster claw idea is the same. It's just that when the muscles grab the tendon for tricep, they often have like kind of like a weird linear striation to them because they're grabbing onto the tendon, so it looks like a lobster claw. This is the one I tend to prefer because it maintains that idea of the 3s, 1, 2, 3 commas over the tendon. Maybe start with something like this first, just a ball and a stick, tendon and a muscle shape, and then invest in the 3 parts when you get there, or if you think you need it. In terms of proportion, it should be about 2/3 to 1/3, kind of mapping out where that proportion would be. Remember the idea of how muscles on asymmetrical forms work? If this flexes, or if it's used, which means it's going to straighten the arm, it'll move up. If it's relaxed, it'll move down. So let's lay this in. Let's get a basic idea for the shape, and we'll give it a color so it stands out. So there's our egg. Color will be, so here's the relative mass that we're trying to find or think about. And then I'll separate it more so into the overlaps that are important. So here's the more specific idea for placement. 3 heads. You have a long, a lateral, and a medial. The long is the inside one. The lateral is the outside one, so this shape is the same as this. And then the medial is the inside one, which is under the other two. The long head attaches, so remember we have here teres major. Let's go into the front still. You have this other one that I mentioned briefly, teres minor. They split teres major and minor, and they leave a little triangle. That's where this tucks into. So in here you would see this. See, this is like the crease in the back of your armpit, or like the pinch of your arm against the side of your rib cage. So that looks like this, and then you won't see these anymore because that teres major is going in front. So there's little tiny triangles like we're talking about, you know, here or here, are so important for how the body fits together, with some of these smaller areas being able to wedge into. The other one, the lateral head, goes up to the humerus. So it's under the deltoid, you're not going to see it, and then it comes down. The medial head you also don't see. It's kind of like the foundation that the other two are sitting on. I want to do, now that I have an idea of the placement, I've done the gesture, now I want to do the parts. So in starting the parts, I'm going to begin here. Big egg, I know where everything's going, more or less. Now let's maybe even use a center line, and I'm dropping that line down to the ulna. This is where it attaches, and so I'm going to make them stand on, we could say like a knife or a house, however you want to think of this. So let's say like that. And then I'm going to keep evident these bony surfaces. Remember, the tricep is the widest part of the arm in terms of muscle. So down here I'm going to see all of these landmarks, and I want to preserve them. Now parts would be showing the three. And so the three, if I show them here, would be the long head, which is the comma up here, is always higher. So like if this is my house, I'm going to always maintain this curve, or the asymmetry of this curve, higher than all of the other heads. The long head shifts down a little bit further. So again, this is exactly like your quadricep. So now I have a high to low. Here's their split. All three of these muscles, long, lateral, medial, attached to the same tendon, this thing. That's the tendon, which is the exact same structure as your quadricep in the leg. Then the very last one is this, but it's an important one because you see this on the bottom of people's arms all the time. It's like a little wave. So I'll just make a last egg here that's asymmetrical to the lateral. So here's another asymmetry, and then that'll just be like a little overlapping hill. So let's give a better idea for the deltoid in this view. Here's the distal head wrapping to the outside. It's going to now cover all things tricep. So you're not going to see where any of these muscles attach at top. And then we'd have the medial head, which is going to just the acromion. So I'm going to try to bring out the landmark there a little bit more. And then I don't see the proximal head, which is the one in front. So that is the tricep and how it looks from the back. So it's just for the sake of your notes, tricep, its job is to extend, and inside of that you have three individual parts. And those parts are long, lateral, and medial. Inside, outside, under. So the next one is the brachialis. Again, that's Latin for humerus, and that's what it covers. So this is going to be a flexing muscle. So the tricep was extending. If that's the only muscle that's doing that, then you're having it working against muscles that flex. The muscles that flex the arm are the bicep weakly and the brachialis. So you have two to work against the tricep. So the brachialis is a pretty non-distinct shape. It's just a big egg. It's a pretty large muscle, primarily for how much it covers. So think of like, so you have your bone, and then think if you folded clay all the way around the bone minus the back. This muscle does that. It goes to the side, the outside, it goes to the front, it covers the inside of the arm. So it's a muscle that folds all the way around, the front, inside, and outside. And so much so that it's described as the pillow muscle for the bicep. So it creates a bed or a pillow right around all of the sharp surfaces of the humerus, and then the bicep just kind of plops on top. Brachialis starts right where the deltoid ends. So if you can find that, this little tail, that's where the brachialis starts. It's going to go here, it's going to go to the front, it's going to go to the inside. And where it ends is the ulna. So let's say, we're not drawing the lower arms, but let's just say it's right here. Here's what's important about it. When you draw it from the side, it's going to be an egg, but it has to go this way. It has to go forward. You can't bring it this way. And I'll explain why. Here it is. So this is the brachialis. We're just aiming it at the ulna. Here's the shape. Now the reason I need that to be moving forward is between that and the tricep, you need a triangle space. And that's where your forearm muscles start. So that's your the big fatty muscles that you can feel opposite from your funny bone. That goes right in there. And if there's not a space left for it, then it's going to be difficult to make the arm feel believable. So that's brachialis side with a landmark that you need to preserve. Now, our only one left over is bicep. And bicep is something that, again, is always overdeveloped in terms of a muscle. People get way too excited about it. It's thin. Its most important quality we've already talked about. It is a muscle that supinates your hand. Right? It's responsible for pulling the thumb outside or away from the center point of your body, like your palms up. So the bicep as a shape, a primitive shape of the brachialis was an egg. Bicep's also an egg. It's just a higher egg. So let's put it here. It's a longer muscle. It doesn't go as far down as the brachialis. So let's put our egg here. This is roughly the placement of the bicep. Remember, the connection for the bicep is not to, let's move it a little bit. Looks a little weird there. So I'm going to put it just a little bit lower. But also I want to make sure I describe before adding it where the connections are. So it would be intuitive to think, oh, it goes to the head of the humerus. But it doesn't. It uses that though. So your bicep, and I wanted to also make it not symmetrical because it's not. It has two heads, right? So here's the bicep shape, and then it's split in two. There's a long and a short head, and each one has its own tendon. So here, this tendon goes up and then it fits over the head of the humerus. And then that tendon keeps going and grabs the scapula, which is this thing. So your bicep attaches to your shoulder blade. It doesn't attach to your humerus at all, not even the bottom. And then the long head, or the other head, attaches from that straight down. So it's kind of like suspended from those two. So that gives it a placement that isn't exactly consistent with the direction of the arm. And that was important. That's why I kind of started it over, because I've made a big point to try to get you all to see that muscles don't go with the bone. They always go against it or slightly across it. So here the bicep goes this way, and then it has two tendons when it ends. One that, in a strange modification of tendon, goes out and then grabs the skin. It grabs the underside of your dermis here. It's just hard to see, so you don't always have to draw that one. The more noticeable tendon attaches to your radius, and that's what's supinating. So bicep ends here. To push our point for the importance of triangles, there's another triangle here. This is an empty space, and that's where the bicep dives down. So it kind of is dropping here as a muscle so that that tendon can flow into the radius over here. So think about the bottom as maybe just make a triangle for the tendon here, because you don't need this one really. Just make that so that you have an idea of where it's moving. So it's going to the radius. Or if you want, you could make it just to incorporate the shape of the fossa, because that's the crook of the arm, kind of the bend of the arm. So if you're designing the bicep, you're doing your homework and you're laying out your construction, the bicep's only on the front, that's all. It doesn't go anywhere else. So for this one, now if I'm trying to think about how this corresponds to perspectives, this line for the outside would match up with where the box is. It would sit on the corner. And then also notice how each time I've drawn a shape, it's thinner than the last one. So here's this is the thickness of the bicep. It's sitting on top of the brachialis, which is a little bit wider, and then behind that I can still see the tricep, which is the widest. This I could probably move in because it's turned away, so I could foreshorten that better, but I still need to pull it down, and then brachialis would be in front. So this is why the arm gets tricky, is because this all turns, but the muscles are all pretty slight. So the box is really important just to help you kind of manage it all.
This lesson was taken from Michael's course on the Introduction to Figure Construction on Proko.com. He just added new lessons on gesture drawing and rendering. The link is in the description. Thanks.